A simple woman was mocked before her name was even called. Just another walk-in with worn athletic gear and no present, someone muttered as she stepped through the doors of Redline's elite downtown dojo, where the mats gleamed like magazine covers and cameras hung like stage lights. A trainer smirked, nudging the sign-in clipboard toward her, "Somebody's aunt here for free cardio." That got a round of laughs louder when she reached for the white belt no one wanted to touch. She was silent, invisible, irrelevant. Until the end of the day, when she stepped into the ring, bowed with surgical stillness, and in a single motion dropped their champion to the mat like a sack of laundry. No one cheered. No one spoke. The live stream cut to static. Redline Karate Academy didn't look like a dojo. It looked like a film set. The front desk opened into a glass-paneled studio where the main mat gleamed under softbox lighting, and a brushed steel logo stretched across the back wall. Camera rigs hung above each ring like surveillance arms. The floor was polished hardwood, the air always cold, the silence carefully engineered to feel expensive. Speakers played ambient music between matches while live stream commentary piped through directional soundbars above the bleachers. The digital belt leaderboard glowed beside the trophy case, animating every time the ranks refreshed. State titles, national qualifiers, and influencer awards lined the north wall in spotlighted glass. Every surface was made to reflect something: light logos or self-regard. Even the ring corners were LED lit. Redline was known for training national competitors, but even more for the fighters who'd gone viral. Here, black belts weren't respected. They were marketed. Teen students gave interviews between drills. Coaches filmed drills on tablets instead of correcting form. Silence was suspicious, and humility confused people. Every month, Redline hosted trials, a public event advertised as a chance for newcomers to prove themselves. In practice, it was a televised ritual to feed the top fighters clean wins. White belts were called padding easy opponents meant to be knocked out, tapped out, or humiliated with flair. The final matches were always stacked with carefully cast opponents, and one consistent headliner, Dylan Fox. Dylan was undefeated and camera-trained. His fights were sold out in advance, not because he surprised people, but because he never had to. Opponents were chosen for optics. Anyone with bad posture or off-brand gear was marked before the bell rang. No one expected upsets because Redline didn't allow for them. Kayla's name appeared on the last line of the fight card. No school, no belt rank, no bio, just walk-in. Match 13. Opponent D. Fox. One of the interns asked if she was a typo. The assistant coach shrugged. That was the only answer anyone needed. Kayla entered Redline without hesitation, but no one noticed. The front desk staff didn't look up until she stepped in front of the tablet and quietly signed her name. Kaylee Wright, one of them, asked, not checking the spelling. She didn't correct them. The clipboard with waivers was shoved toward her like it was a tray of napkins. She wore a plain gray hoodie faded at the elbows with sleeves pushed up to reveal wrapped wrists. Her leggings were clean but worn, and her shoes were flat-soled trainers with softened tread. A second-hand duffel bag hung from her shoulder seams, curling slightly at the edges. No logos, no color, just silence. One instructor leaned toward another near the leaderboards. "That her," he whispered, then raised his voice enough for the students behind him to hear. "She looks like someone's mom who got lost on the way to yoga class." Laughter bloomed without effort. A few phones tilted toward her in near-silent coordination. She was directed to the locker alcove but didn't use it. Instead, Kayla took a seat near the edge of the mat in the quietest square of floor she could find. She unzipped her bag, pulled out standard-issue gloves, and began checking the seams. One student whispered, "She brought her own like it was some sort of offense." The trials roster was projected on the back wall above the ring. Names rotated in and out, ranks flashing beside them. Kayla's name was at the very bottom, blinking once before freezing in place. K. Blake. Match 13. Opponent D. Fox. Someone whistled. Another chuckled. "That's a mercy kill," someone muttered behind their screen. She tied the white belt without a word, the knot flat, the ends perfectly even. Her hands moved slowly, precisely, as if she were measuring each part of her silence. A coach watching from the sidelines didn't bother to hide his smirk. A mindfulness coach or something, he asked, already looking away. The trials coordinator stepped onto the edge of the mat with a mic in hand. "Last match of the day, folks. Looks like we've got a walk-in. Kayla Blake. going up against our very own undefeated champ Dylan Fox. The crowd laughed, not cruelly but confidently. It was the laughter of people who knew how the story ends. Kayla looked up at the ring, then down again, as if nothing had been said. She stayed seated, still, breathing slow, preparing for something no one else could see. The gloves were wrong before she even put them on. A junior coach with too much gel in his hair handed them over with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "All we've got left," he said, even though a full equipment rack stood just behind him. The gloves were loose at the wrist and stuffed unevenly. Kayla accepted them without comment and walked back toward the far end of the room. Her warm-up space wasn't a mat. It was a frayed corner of vinyl near the gear cage, halfway between the mop closet and a stack of cardboard boxes marked "Return." A few white belts stretched nearby, talking quietly about wrist locks. No one included her. A backstage assistant passed with a clipboard, glanced at her, and said, "Sorry you're not in the rotation," before vanishing into the prep bay. Up front, the fighters' lineup photo was already being taken. The main group was staged in height order, each athlete holding their belt color proudly. Kayla's name wasn't called. No one looked for her. One instructor muttered, "Not even worth retouching," as the camera flashed again. The sparring roster flashed on the wall. Dylan's name came with stats 48-0, 3 regional titles, 300,000 followers. His photo had been updated. Kayla's tile just said, "Walk in." No photo, no stats, no background. A red tag blinked under her name, "Final Exhibition." A student, watching the live stream, nudged his friend and whispered, "She's the #bait." KO Countdown started trending within 10 minutes. Next came Yarsh White Belt Finale and Nashker Night Night Blake. The event announcer leaned into the mic and delivered the line like it was sponsored, and closing out today's trials, a very special match. Redline's own undefeated champ, Dylan Fox, facing off against Kayla Blake, one of today's guest walk-ins. Let's hear it. The crowd erupted. Dylan took his spot in the ring early. He adjusted his belt, did 2 deep bows, and walked slow laps around the mat like he was already filming a victory reel. "You're about to witness a mercy demonstration," he said into the mic, drawing a second round of cheers. Students lined the edge of the ring. Phones were out. Even the assistant coaches gathered like it was intermission. Kayla moved to the far wall. She dropped to her knees beside the ring's supply bench and began tightening her gloves. Her breath stayed low and slow. She tested each wrist one at a time, twisting inward until the seams compressed properly. No one watched. No one cared. A camera drone hovered above her lens, angled down. A voice from the live stream feed quipped, "Hope she signed the waiver." The comment thread filled with cry-laugh emojis and gifs of people fainting. No one knew what she was doing. They only knew what they expected her to become. One coach walked past her prep space and kicked aside a used towel without looking down. Another told a student nearby, "No coaching allowed on this one. Let the audience enjoy it." The audience was already settled. They didn't want to fight. They wanted an ending. Kayla stood once, bowed quietly to the edge of the mat, then dropped back to her knees. Her eyes stayed closed as she moved through a final wrist stretch. Her face remained calm. Her silence didn't beg. It watched. And none of them trainers, fighters, fans had the language to read it. Dylan stepped into the ring like a celebrity arriving at a party. His GI was fitted and crisp, the sleeves tailored to show every line of his arms. He bowed with dramatic precision, then turned to wink at the corner camera where his sponsor logo blinked blue. One of the assistant coaches shouted, "Let's go, champ!" as a round of applause rippled from the bleachers. His footwork began before the match did light hops, shoulder rolls, a sharp ki that echoed through the speakers. Kayla entered without ceremony. Her belt hung straight, her sleeves a little too long. She bowed with no flair, then stepped calmly to her side of the mat. There was no camera cutaway, no stat overlay, just her white belt, catching the light as she settled into a neutral stance. Someone in the crowd let out a low chuckle, and another followed with a cough that disguised a laugh. The bell sounded. Dylan moved fast. A quick jab combination snapped forward, then a fake-out kick meant to spin the crowd into cheers. Kayla shifted once. No block. Just a slide, half a foot of air between his strike and her collarbone. Her back heel never left the mat. He kept circling. She mirrored him, always staying a step outside his rhythm. His punches grew broader, louder, his footfalls heavier. The audience watched like it was scripted. One instructor muttered, "She's just running," and got a small laugh in return. Another added, "No power. She's stalling." Kayla ducked a looping strike and reset her stance again, chin down, hands quiet. She hadn't thrown a single counter. Dylan shouted mid-kick, a ki designed more for volume than impact. His foot swept through open space. Again, another miss. The audience had stopped filming, but not because they were bored. Phones dipped slightly. Heads tilted. A student at the edge of the mat leaned forward, whispering, "She's not off balance. Not once." His friend frowned, watching Kayla's feet instead of Dylan's arms. Dylan lunged forward with a shoulder feint, but Kayla slipped the angle and reset again, clean, flat-footed still. His breathing picked up. He was sweating now, cheeks flushed. The gap between strikes widened, not because of timing, but because he couldn't figure out what he was missing. From the bleachers, the trial director watched with narrowed eyes. No one said it, but the fight was starting to look wrong. Dylan had landed nothing. Kayla hadn't touched him, and yet somehow she was in control. The announcer's voice was quieter than before, giving only the occasional remark. The audience wasn't laughing anymore. One parent lowered her phone into her lap. A live stream comment appeared on the projection wall, just 3 dots, like someone was waiting for a moment that hadn't come. Kayla pivoted left, ducked under a fake high punch, and rotated back to center. Dylan exhaled hard, loud enough to catch in the ring mic. He came at her again, faster, swinging wide. This time she didn't dodge. She dipped low, redirected the energy with her left hand, and slid out of range before the next strike arrived. The audience gasped, not because of contact, but because they finally realized who was controlling the clock. The ring timer blinked under the camera feed. 30 seconds left. Dylan's chest heaved. He hadn't landed once. Kayla hadn't flinched. She hadn't spoken. She hadn't even blinked. This wasn't a match. This was a countdown. And no one knew what would happen when it hit 0. The timer showed 9 seconds when Dylan spun. He shifted hard off his back foot, pivoting into a wide hook kick, the kind designed more for reels than real contact. The crowd knew the shape of it, his signature move, the one with the snap and the yell and the dramatic camera angle. But Kayla didn't move back. She stepped in. Her body lowered into his blind spot, her arms coiled like thread through fabric. She caught his leg mid-rotation with a soft parry just above the ankle and placed her palm vertically against the base of his chest. Then she pushed. Not a strike, just a transfer of momentum so exact it looked like nothing at all. Dylan stopped moving midair. His breath caught, his face drained. His legs collapsed first, then his torso folding inward like fabric, losing tension. He hit the mat flat and didn't bounce. The sound followed a second later, dull and final. The room went silent before anyone understood why. No applause, no shout. Someone in the front row dropped a water bottle and didn't pick it up. The camera drone adjusted its focus, unsure whether to pan or hold. Kayla returned to neutral stance. Her hands lowered. Her breathing didn't change. She looked at no one. The live stream feed paused on Dylan's motionless body belt, twisted under his hip timer, frozen at 7 seconds. Commentary cut off mid-sentence. One parent lowered her phone. A trainer blinked like waking from a trance. No one said it aloud, but the shift had already happened. They hadn't watched her win. They'd watched her reveal what none of them could see, and now the air itself felt different. The room hadn't moved since Dylan hit the mat. No one had spoken. Some were still holding their phones, not filming anymore, just frozen mid-grip, mid-breath, mid-thought. Then the side door opened. Marshall Keene stepped into the dojo wearing a charcoal blazer, polished shoes, and the stillness of someone who had arrived with purpose. He held a slim leather portfolio and scanned the room once. His gaze landed on Kayla. He stopped walking. Without hesitation, he walked forward and bowed. Not a nod. A full formal bow, arms straight, head lowered, a depth of respect that most in the room had never seen performed outside ceremony. A few gasped. One instructor let out a breath that sounded more like a question. The front desk assistant, watching from across the mat, turned and reached for the live stream console without thinking. Chairwoman Blake Marshall said, his voice level but audible in every corner of the room, "I apologize for the delay." No one moved. Even the camera drone backed off as if uncertain whether to keep recording. The announcer opened his mouth, then shut it again. Marshall reached into the portfolio and removed a simple folder. No logos, no seals, just 2 sheets of paper and a key card. He held them out with both hands. Kayla stepped forward and accepted them silently. Her face didn't change. She didn't look at the audience. She didn't need to. Marshall turned slightly, addressing the entire room without raising his voice. As of this morning, Horizon Athletics Group holds the controlling share in Redline Karate Academy. All operations personnel and licensing now report through Chairwoman Blake. Someone dropped a clipboard near the warm-up area. A student flinched. The leaderboard screen, still paused from the last match, flickered faintly above the ring. Dylan remained seated on the mat, head-bowed, hands resting on his knees. A student stepped forward to help him up. He shook his head. A trainer near the entrance whispered, "She owns Redline," like the sentence couldn't be real. Another nodded without speaking. Someone finally turned off the background music that had been looping unnoticed since the match began. Kayla walked to the edge of the ring. She glanced up at the leaderboard. Her name wasn't listed. Neither was Dylan's. Only a blinking cursor where the next name would update. She looked at it once, then looked away. No one asked for clarification. No one needed to. The hierarchy had already shifted. Not with a win, not with a press release, just with the truth arriving late, but precisely on time. Kayla didn't speak as she followed Marshall toward the side office. She walked past students, trainers, and staff who no longer met her gaze. The forms were already on the desk, 2 documents, 1 digital key. She read them once, signed both, and handed them back. Nothing more was required. The head coach was dismissed quietly, a staff notification sent before he could reach his locker. His profile photo vanished from the dojo's display wall a few minutes later. The assistant coach who had handed Kayla the bad gloves was removed from the internal staff directory. No confrontation, no announcement, just a blank space where his name used to be. The leaderboard refreshed without fanfare. Kayla's name now sat in the administrative tier above all belt categories. The ring projection screen updated next. Dylan's sponsorship profile disappeared from the scrolling banner. One by one, his brand tags were deleted. No one cheered. No one said his name. A girl who had laughed earlier now watched Kayla from the bench near the lockers. She didn't smile, just nodded small and slow as if apologizing without words. Kayla returned the gesture, brief, silent enough. The live stream recording was archived to the dojo's private server, but clips had already escaped. A 6-second video of Dylan falling hit social media before the hour ended. It had no caption, just silence and motion. Under the official Redline account, one sponsor posted a single sentence effective. "Today we welcome new leadership under Chairwoman Kayla Blake." Dylan remained seated near the base of the ring. He wasn't told to leave. He just didn't get up. No one spoke to him. No one offered him water. He was still breathing, but quieter now, like the wind had gone out of something larger than lungs. The instructor who used to call every match walked out with his duffel bag slung low. His clipboard was left behind on the bench. It was damp at the corners, curled from sweat, or maybe time. The ring timer was unplugged by a maintenance tech who had no idea what had just happened. She was just following the schedule. No music played, no buzzer sounded. The dojo didn't collapse. It emptied. And in its place, something steadier began to hold. Kayla sat on the bench nearest the ring and untied the white belt from her waist. Her fingers moved slowly, not from hesitation, but with the care of someone closing a chapter properly. She smoothed it flat in her lap, folded it once, then again, until it formed a clean, compact square. It was the same belt they'd handed her without eye contact, the one no one thought she'd wear past the first round. She placed it beside her on the bench, centered between the seams. It didn't belong to her anymore. Around the mat, conversation had stopped. A few students still held their phones, but not to record. The Lens didn't know what to do with her anymore. The same group that had laughed when she signed in now watched her like they were trying to remember the details of a story they had misread from the start. She hadn't grown louder. She had simply become undeniable. She reached for her old gym bag, the same one that looked out of place when she'd arrived. The strap creaked softly as she lifted it onto her shoulder. Her steps were the same rhythm, same weight, but every foot of space around her had shifted. Where students once brushed past her, they now stepped back, not out of fear, but something quieter, deference. A trainer near the leaderboard gave a short, unsteady nod. Another lowered his head slightly as if uncertain whether to bow. Even the front desk staff, the ones who hadn't said her name right, stood when she approached. One of them reached to open the door before she had to ask. She paused in the doorway, just long enough for the light to catch on her shoulder for the hush behind her to settle fully into the room. The exit looked exactly the same as when she'd walked in. Same scuffed tile, same soft hum from the speakers overhead. But this time, no one followed her with words. She didn't look back. No wave, no farewell. Just the soft click of the door behind her and the stillness she left in her place. And on the bench near the ring, the white belt remained where she'd left it, folded, silent, and no longer necessary. 1 week later, Redline's homepage had changed. The leaderboard still updated automatically, the class schedule still refreshed every Sunday night, but a quiet banner now ran across the top, under new leadership. No announcement, no press release, just text in a soft gray bar. The video of the match was archived almost immediately, but a 6-second clip of Dylan's collapse had already gone viral. By the end of the week, it had over 1 million views. The comment section no longer mocked white belts. No one called it a fluke. Most just wrote the same word beneath the video: respect. Kayla wasn't in any of the new promo photos. There were no interviews, no podcasts, no articles. But her presence lived in everything that remained. In the new code of conduct posted beside the mat. In the way instructors bowed fully when they entered the room. In the absence of hashtags. In the silence that no longer felt awkward but appropriate. She never posted a reaction, never corrected anyone, never claimed a thing. On the dojo's class schedule, 1 new course had been added, listed in plain text with no description: Foundations of Stillness. It filled within 2 days. At the front desk, a new student waited with a pen in hand. She wore mismatched gear and had no belt yet. When the clipboard was passed to her, she hesitated, looking up at the mat beyond the windows. She smiled just slightly and signed her name. Sometimes power isn't loud. Sometimes it just leaves the room different. She walked in alone, underestimated and ignored, wearing nothing loud except her presence. They laughed at her silence, dismissed her as weak, and turned her into a punchline before the match even began. But strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it moves quietly, waits patiently, and speaks only once, with precision. She didn't fight for recognition. She revealed who she was through composure, skill, and truth. And when the noise faded, what remained was a room that could never look at her or itself the same way again. Her story is a reminder that self-worth is not given, it is held. That dignity can exist without applause. And that some of the most powerful people you'll ever meet are the ones who never ask to be seen. If this story spoke to something quiet in you, share your thoughts in the comments. Follow for more stories about quiet strength and the power of being underestimated.